Well, welcome back to another edition of Bill and Kipp's Excellent Bible Adventure with the Gospel of John. We're going to continue on this week, and this time we're sort of shifting. We've been giving you over the past three segments. We've been giving you sort of an in-depth look at the person John, and then sort of the nature of the Gospel of John and the writings of John, and how there was what makes John unique among the other portions of the New Testament. And so this week we're actually starting in on the actual gospel, moving through the gospel, through the major stories and major images of the Gospel of John. And of course we'll begin chapter 1, verse 1. And it begins in a very, I guess we would say, familiar way, because it begins with "in the beginning." Genesis, if you'll remember, in the Old Testament, the first book of Scripture in the canon of the Bible, it starts the same way, in the beginning, and it talks about how God makes the heavens and the earth and forms everything and creates all the creatures, etc. Well, here in the first chapter, first verse, the Gospel of John, we get "in the beginning." And so it's sort of that new version of what we experience in Genesis. And we even see this carried forward in the writings of John, because in the Revelation, we have the new creation. So Genesis tells us about the creation in the beginning. Revelation tells us that there'll be a new creation. And there's actually a school of thought out there that when John's gospel is written, that the idea would be that it would be the first of the scriptures to be read, and so it would take that balancing place. The Hebrew scriptures begin in the beginning. The Christian scriptures begin in the beginning. You see God's hand at work in both places, and you see Christ. You see Jesus at work in the creative energy. And so that's sort of where we're going to begin, is there. I will say I love the beginning of John's gospel.
Yeah, it's unlike the other gospels.
Oh, absolutely.
Where, particularly Matthew and Luke, you've got the stories of Jesus' birth.
Right.
This is sort of his birth story.
Sort of, but you know,
it's not.
In Matthew and Luke, you get tied up in genealogies,
Right,
where you're going through, and this person begat that person, who begat that person, etc., etc. And here you get this beautiful language and this flowing image of light and darkness and all of this that's going on. And just like in the original Genesis, you have separation of light from darkness, and all here you have light and darkness. And I've always said that if I could pick one passage of Scripture to do this with, probably the start of John's Gospel. I'd really like to hear James Earl Jones read this.
Yeah.
Because wouldn't that be powerful?
Yeah.
I mean, the voice of James Earl Jones reading it, that'd be good stuff. But we don't have that. And
not in the budget.
Definitely not in the budget. And so we're not even going to try. But we are going to get into the actual meat of this powerful gospel today. And so start us off with that prologue that we love.
Well, and the big piece that comes through is, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word is not the Word. The Word in Greek means logos, and that's a very kind of a simple word for us. We get the word logo, but it's also the word that we would use for logic, and so we find it. So you go back. In the beginning was the logos, the logic, and the logos was God. And so there's this ordering principle, you might say. If you really look at what this means, for us, the word logos, we use it a lot, we don't realize it. Logical theology is an ordering of, or words about God, we would say, but it's also an ordering of those. Geology is an ordering of what we know about the world.
Right.
Biology is an ordering of what we know about life. And so those terms we use, but in in the time of John, the Logos theology said that there was an underlying ordering principle of the universe, and it was a Greek philosophy. But it's also found in the wisdom literature of the Old Testament. And so John begins to sort of weave these together and say, in the beginning was this ordering principle of the universe, and this ordering principle of the universe was with God at the creation and was God. And so this is his description of the divinity of Jesus. And he goes on to say later on, the Word, the Logos, became flesh and lived with us.
Now, I love that what John is doing is he's taking, living in Ephesus, writing this to be read probably first by the Ephesian church and those there in a Greek-speaking world. He takes their understanding.
Right.
He takes their thought and he appropriates it to help them understand the depth of God. It's a little bit like, John probably wouldn't like me referencing Paul, but I'm going to. It's a little like Paul standing in Athens and talking about you have shrines to all these gods, and you even have a shrine to an unknown God. Let me tell you about that.
Let's talk about that.
Let's talk about that one. I'm not going to cover these other guys. I'm going to deal with the unknown God. I'm going to tell you who he is.
Yeah.
And I love that, Paul does that, but I love that John, to get people into his gospel, into this story of Jesus, he takes something that they would have already known and weaves it in.
Right. And as you notice, we have another very expensive prop that
this may actually exceed all
the previous props.
I don't know that we'll ever top whatever this is. We may never top it.
Well, underneath this is a wired shelf that you use for drying dishes.
Okay.
So if you'll pull that side, it'll pull a little bit out and push in. All right. So, but you can make shapes. I've thrown a cloth over a towel, and my kids are missing a towel these days. But anyway,
and none of the dishes are drying at your house.
They're not. But see, it makes sort of a U shape. You could make this a seat, a bed. But get it that side, and let's just flip it. Or see the underlying structure. But if you keep working at it, now you've got a bench. You've got a bench right there.
Yeah.
You can decorate it up how you want to. This could be pink. This could be red. But
It'd be just lovely.
Yeah, and I'm excited about this because you can pull it this way. See, I'll pull this out. It's completely unrehearsed, folks. Completely unrehearsed. Okay, maybe we won't do that. There we go. There we go. All right. So if you pull this over this, now we have this lovely ramp.
Ooh, yeah.
See,
yeah.
and
now we need Matchbox cars.
You could it could be any color that you wanted to. But somewhere underneath, whatever exists, is some structure.
You're right.
I mean, and so if you build a building, you can have aluminum siding, you can have brick siding, you could put up wood, but somewhere underneath
there's framework.
There's a framework.
Yeah.
And that framework, without it, nothing would exist.
Yeah.
It would just collapse.
Right.
And so I'm just going to throw it. I don't want to damage that, but anyway, I'm going to throw it. So John is saying, in the beginning was this structure of the universe, and it was with God, and it was God. And so kind of from the get-go, if we're going to follow John, we're having to buy in. First of all, that there is an underlying structure to the universe, that there is a meaning, there is a purpose, that somebody has a plan.
Right.
And that someone who gives order to the world is someone that loves us. And so we pick up with John 1:2. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him. And without him, not one thing came into being. What has come into being in him was life. And that life was the light of all people. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. That word can also mean comprehended. Is that double entendre that John likes to use. And so we see a lot of themes going on here in the prologue that we've got to be ready for. You've got the light theme. Jesus says, I'm the light of the world. The light here shining in the darkness. Life is another word that we didn't talk about in the other episode about big words. but life is the word Zoe. If you know a girl whose name is Zoe, that's Greek for life, and that is a huge word for John. And so, um, so Jesus was kind of, to go back to the Matthew and Luke. How do you define who Jesus is? Well, he was born of the Virgin Mary. He came into this world. He was divine, son of God, son of man.
Right.
For John, he was in the beginning, and he doesn't really describe how he became. He just says he became human.
Right.
But he was with God in the beginning, and he is the one that gives structure to everything that he does.
Like in the Nicene Creed, talking about that he was begotten, not made. He was
Right,
one
right.
with the Father, basically.
Right.
But because he was there in Genesis, and now he's here in the New Testament.
Right, right.
The same God, the same framework is at work, and is still there, and that Jesus is a part of this Godhead that holds it all together.
Exactly. And so that's his part of it, describing the Trinity, is to see Jesus as this ordering principle of the world that becomes flesh.